In this video, we'll take a look at row 2 of the TinyMCE text editor. To access the additional rows, you need to click on this icon on the top left, which expands the toolbar. The first button here is the undo button, which will undo whatever action or series of actions you've just completed. The redo button will redo whatever your last action was that was undone. The next button is the underline button. So if you select your text, you can apply the underline formatting to that text. Next is the strike through. Again, select your text, and the strike through puts a line through the text. In mathematical or scientific notation, you sometimes have to add a subscript or a superscript. Select your text and apply the subscript formatting, or select your text and apply the superscript formatting. The next three buttons affect the alignment of the text. By default, most text is aligned to the left, but if you select your text, you could align it to the center or even to the right. The next two buttons affect the indenting of the text. If you want to indent your text, select it and select the increase indent, and you can increase it multiple times. Once you've indented your text, the decrease indent button becomes available, and you can remove the indents. You can select different colors for your text by selecting your text and the text color tool, and you're presented with an array of colors, but you can also choose from the color picker. If you hold down your mouse and move it around the color picker, you'll see that the color will change here to reflect your choice. You can also change the intensity of that color by selecting it over here. There's also a palette of colors that you can select from, or some named colors that you can select from. The next tool changes the background color of the text. So if you select your text, and again the color picker is the same, then the background of the text will change. Text is generally entered from left to right, but you could also change the direction so that it is right to left. The next button allows you to insert a non-breaking space character. In Moodle, if you add spaces between words, generally Moodle will collapse those spaces and you won't see that space in there. So if you want to have spaces between words, you need to add them as non-breaking space characters. This can also be used when you have two words that you do not want to break at the end of a line when the text is wrapping around. This button you can insert special characters, and you have given a list of special characters. You may want to add the copyright sign. You might want to use a table to organize some of your information. You're given the properties of the table. The default is 2 columns and 2 rows. The cell padding is the space within the cell around the text, and the cell spacing is the space between the cells. You could add a border, and there are some other options you can select. If you go into the Advanced tab, you'll see that you can select the border color. Again, you're given the color picker to choose from. When you first insert a table, if you don't specify a width, you will get a table that looks like this with no space in it. If you add text, the space will expand to fill it. But you could choose a specific width for your table. If you go back into your table properties, you can set a width as the percent of the page or as a number of pixels. And that gives you a fixed width for your table. And that brings us to the end of that row.